Hello everyone, my name is Lakesh, and today we're gonna learn the past tense. But before you even try to learn the past tense, you need to make sure that you know the present tense of avoir and the present tense of être. You should know what avoir and être means, and you should be able to translate phrases such as y'all have and she is really quickly like that. If you aren't able to do that, I strongly urge you to pause this video and go watch the video I made on irregular verbs in the present tense. Because if you don't know how to conjugate the present tense of avoir and être, it's going to be a lot harder for you to learn the past tense. And as a heads up, the past tense is probably the most complicated tense in French in my mind. But if you can get your head around the past tense, what you'll notice is that you have essentially learned 6 other tenses at the same time, which you will understand after you learn the past tense. So stick with it, guys. Be resilient. Okay, so here's just a quick recap of the regular verbs in the present tense. So here we have avoir, être, and aller. You need to know avoir and être to learn the past tense, as I already said. And also as a heads up, you need to learn the present tense of aller to learn the near future. Okay, so I'm going to split the past tense into 3 videos. One about the past tense with être, the past tense with avoir, and past tense with irregular past participles. And for future reference and clarification purposes, the past tense and the perfect tense basically mean the same thing. Okay, so when do we use the past tense? Obviously, it is important to know when to use the past tense, because if you're in a French conversation and you don't know when to use the past tense in French, you will never know when to actually conjugate a verb in the past tense. The past tense is used to describe an event that occurred in the past. Kind of obvious. So I have finished my homework. It's an event that has already occurred. It's been finished. And also note that unlike in English and Spanish, in French, I have finished is the exact same as I finished. J'ai fini can mean I have finished, or j'ai fini can mean I finished. To the French, I have finished and I finished are the exact same translation. Okay, so now we're moving on to actually conjugating verb in the perfect tense with être. So as I was saying, if the verb you want to conjugate is in this list, for example, if you want to say, I died, the verb you're going to use is mourir, it's in this list. What you're going to do is, you're going to get the present tense of être. If you want to say, I died, personal pronoun there's je, so you're going to conjugate être in the present tense, in the je form, so it's going to be je suis. And then the second half is the past participle of your verb. This is presuming that the past participle is regular. If it's irregular, just ignore that for now. We're going to talk about that in the 3rd video of me covering the past tense. If the verb is an er verb, for example, rester, you're going to chop off the er and you're going to add an e. If the verb is an ir verb, you're going to chop off the ir and you're going to add an I, so finir would become fini. If it's an re verb, you're going to chop off the re and you're going to add a u. So vendu. And then another step is that you're going to add an agreement. If the personal pronoun you're talking about is plural, for example, nous, which obviously refers to a group of people more than one, you're going to add an s to your past participle. If the personal pronoun you're talking about is feminine, for example, elle, you're going to add an e to your past participle. I think it will be useful to just run through an example here. Whenever I'm translating I went, I'm thinking I went, the verb for that is to go, which is aller in French. Aller is a Mrs. Van de Tramp verb, so I'm going to use the perfect tense with être. I'm going to conjugate the perfect tense of être in the je form, so it's going to be je suis. And then I'm going to have to make the past participle of my verb aller. Aller is an er verb, so I'm going to chop off that er and I'm going to add e. And then ask myself, do I need an agreement? It's definitely not plurals and it's not s. And I'm a guy, not a girl, so I'm not going to add that e. It's going to become je suis aller. And also, as you might have noticed in the present tense regular video, I mentioned that you have to pronounce this s when there's an a after it. So je suis aller. Okay, so let's run through another example of using the perfect tense with être. So if you want to translate I stayed, the verb for to stay is rester. You ask yourself, is rester Mrs. Van de Tramp? Yes, it is. I'm going to use the perfect tense with être. So I'm going to conjugate the present of être in the je form, which is je suis. So that's the first step, je suis. And then the second step is conjugating the past participle of my verb rester here. Rester is regular and it's an ER verb, so I'm going to chop off that ER and I'm going to add an E accent to it. And then I ask myself, do I need an agreement? The pronoun I is definitely not plural, and I'm not a girl, so I'm not going to add the E. Je suis resté, as you can see here. So another example, we have gone or we went. I asked myself, what verb is at play here? The English verb here is to go, which is aller in French. The personal pronoun here is nous. So since aller is a Mrs. Van der Tramp verb, I'm going to use the perfect tense with être. So that means I'm going to conjugate the new form of être, which is nous sommes. So that's the first half, nous sommes. And then the second half is going to be the past participle of my verb, which is aller. Aller is regular. It's an ER verb. So I'm going to chop off that ER. I'm going to add an E accent in there. And then the third thing is that I ask myself, do I need to add an agreement to my past participle? Is it plural? Yes, it is. Nous is referring to a group of more than one people. So I'm going to add an S to my past participle. Is it feminine? We're going to presume that I'm talking about a group which has at least one guy in it. Therefore, you don't need to add any. So an important thing to notice here is that if you're saying we went and you're referring to a group of 500 girls and one guy, you won't add E. When you're saying we or y'all and you're referring to a group of full of girls, you're gonna add the E at the end. So it'll be nous sommes allés. I'll now perform 2 raps in this video. The first rap will be helping you learn Mrs. Van der Tramp, and the second rap will be helping you to remember the past participle rules for regular verbs. So let's get started. Mrs. Van der Tramp, mourir, rester, sauter, venir, aller, naître, descendre, entrer, tomber, retenir, arriver, monter, partir. Past participle rule. ER verbs you chop off ER and you add E accent. IR verbs you chop off IR and you add I. IE verbs you chop off IE and you add U. That's it for this video, guys. I hope I was able to explain to you clearly how to conjugate a verb in the past tense if it's an extra verb. Please feel free to rewatch this video a couple of times. It's a difficult grammar concept to get your head around, but if you stick at it and if you're resilient, you will learn it really well. Good luck, guys.